Well, would you look at that? See that groove that's cut into this rock? Foiler's been making some goofy noises here the last week or so. Well, I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure it got kicked up by a tire somehow, but back underneath the back end of the shaft right there, there's it's a guard. A plate to protect anything from coming up and kissing that shaft and doing a bunch of damage. Well, this got up underneath the shaft and that plate, and I guess I could see why it was making some noise. It's what I was working on, but I was asked politely by a viewer to explain the difference between the chisel plow and a disc. Or was it the VT? I guess I can try to cover them both. They asked me politely enough that, I'm going to go ahead and make the video on it. For most people, it's a pretty cut and dry difference. Primary tillage, potentially seed bed prep. They don't look anything alike, but this is meant for being used for primary tillage. It incorporates the corn residue or the soybean residue or the crop residue in the fall. If you're spreading manure, this is going to help churn the soil up, bury your manure, keep your nutrients in the ground so they don't run off, or if you got a lot of nitrogen or put a bunch of nitrogen down, you want to incorporate that. Keeps us from losing your nutrients. Also helps with dealing with compaction. Granted, it depends on how deep you can run it. That could be, I'm going to go to the old faithful and say, depending on your soil type, really depends on what kind of compaction you're dealing with, how deep the compaction is. It really depends on what you're really looking to do for your management program. With running the VT, that's for pretty much moving as little dirt as possible. Let's say if you're going to run it in the fall. We run that over our corn stalks, knocks all the stalks over, kind of pushes the stalks into the ground, mixes a little dirt in with it, and it levels the field out so you don't have any stalks standing up. Gets the stalks and the residue down into the ground, some dirt over top of them so they can start breaking down quicker and easier, as opposed to leaving the stalks standing up into the air where they're not really going to do much for decomposing. Also, I like to go through with the VT in the fall for two different reasons. For our operation, first and foremost, say if we got corn stalks in the fall, that's going to be going into soybeans. Now, soybeans generally, I don't see much point in doing a lot of deep tillage if there isn't a compaction issue, say deeper down. So it doesn't really make much sense to me to go through and chisel if it's going into soybeans. Personally, I feel like soybeans generally loosen the soil up. I have one farm, and I know that a lot of this doesn't get out there, make a lot of sense to everybody, especially new viewers, because I've been told that I have local people that go by and don't understand why I would chisel plow soybean stubble like I did this spring. The reason I did that is because I was incorporating manure that was on the soybean stubble that I had just spread that day. I also have a farm that, even though on years that it is soybean stubble, I do go through and I chisel it, because I still get big chunks of compacted soil on that farm. And it seems like overall, for soil health, it actually helps to chisel plow in the fall. It's bringing up the dirt underneath, any compaction running over the ground with the combine tires. And I like to try to run it as deep as possible, literally just shove the lever all the way ahead and get down as deep as we can. Granted, it's not going to be as deep as an inline ripper that goes, right around 20 inches or so, depending on what you have the tool set for. More or less just a chisel plow, incorporating residue, breaking up any compaction you have, and mixing in like manure or whatever else you may have in the soil. The VT, I like to go through, if I'm going to be planting soybeans the next year, VT the stalks in the fall, and that's it. Come in the next spring, VT the ground once, maybe twice if it needs it, and then plant right into that ground. It saves fuel, saves potentially any erosion, especially for all the rain we've had here lately. But we're only running this an inch or so, 2 inches, inch and a half into the soil. We're not really trying to run this very deep where you're doing a lot of soil moving. I mean, especially in the fall, I like to drag this over the field. It just knocks all the residue, all the stalks over the residue into the ground. Our chisel plow following the VT in the fall. The reason I would do that is if we're doing corn on corn ground or continuous corn, I like having the ground chisel plowed. I feel like it helps with our yield. So for flow through on the chisel plow, because it does like to plug, I like to go through in the fall, hit it once with the VT. It kind of breaks up any of the stalks that didn't get processed properly or completely with the corn head, kind of incorporates the residue a little bit. That you can chisel plow with a lot less headaches, as opposed to just going in right behind the combine with the chisel plow. The coulters are supposed to do a better job with cutting up the residue ahead of you. I mean, the coulters could be replaced, but I think everybody knows what my opinion is on this chisel plow. I don't want to put any more money into it than I have to. That's it. I just don't want to. It's getting to be a parts issue. You can't get this back shaft anymore, and I cringe at the thought of anything breaking on here that we can't go to the local machine shop and get made, because we are screwed. So I hope I didn't talk around in circles too much. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, I mean, for what they do. But right now I'm actually going to get this unhooked, get the 76 cleaned up, and I don't know if I'm gonna get it hooked onto the 735 quite yet for cutting hay tomorrow. It's wet kind of yet. The ground is soft, spongy still. It's not really much of a drying day. It's hot, it's humid, it's muggy. The ground, say like the gravel up through here in the driveway, is drying up, but if there's any, well, out in the field where you got the hay that is protecting the soil from a little bit of sun we have and a little bit of a breeze, it's really not doing a whole lot to dry the ground out. So we have, starting today or yesterday, we were supposed to have a week at least of no rain. I could go 4 months without any moisture at all and be perfectly fine with that. That's not how the weather works in Southwest Wisconsin. So we're going to try to let it dry out as much as we can. We're going to go through anything we do cut that's heavy enough worth cutting, which probably just everything in general. Windrow it and ted it. The big thing is that I want the ground to dry out enough that we're not cutting the hay down and we're putting it down on mud. I mean, it's okay if the ground is a little wet yet, but I don't want to put it down on just outright mud. I mean, when I can walk across the field and I can literally see the water squishing out of the soil as I'm walking over it, it's too wet yet. So what we really need is blue sky, sunny, and 90s, but I think we're pretty well knocked back to 70s and 80s. It's fall. It's fall weather. It's going to be, we're in the last couple days of summer, I do believe. But that's the question I got for you. Where are you at and what do you actually call fall? Is it autumn or is it fall? I mean, spring, summer, and winter, I mean, that's exactly what they are. I don't know where autumn came from, but I guess there are some places in the world where it's wet season and dry season, just depending on where you're at. But who actually refers to the fall as autumn? because I don't know anybody that really does. So with that, I hope I answered your questions kind of vaguely, but I'll admit, but you know, it is what it is. So with that, take care, take it easy, keep in touch. I'll talk to you guys later.